At first glance, Sheikh Hamid al-Rahman al-Makhtari's life seemed an impeccable display of wealth, power, and influence, a life filled with glittering parties, high-profile connections, and the lavish comforts of a man whose empire spanned continents and whose name alone commanded respect. Yet behind the polished veneer of luxury, subtle tensions and hidden rivalries simmered, unseen by most and unspoken by those who moved through his orbit daily. And it was in a luxurious Beverly Hills mansion, rented in secrecy far from the opulent towers of Dubai, that the convergence of ambition, desire, and betrayal would manifest in a tragedy that shocked not only those closest to him, but the world at large, because there, with Sophia Durant, a young woman whose beauty, intelligence, and awareness of the Sheikh's financial dealings made her both indispensable and dangerous. The fate of two lives was sealed in a night that began with whispers and laughter, the faint hum of city lights outside, and yet meticulously orchestrated plans unfolded in parallel, spanning thousands of miles and multiple actors, from shadowy intermediaries in Dubai to operatives in Los Angeles, each following instructions precise in timing and execution. And when investigators later arrived at the mansion, they found signs of premeditation everywhere. Minute fibers of latex on doorknobs, security systems subtly bypassed, sedatives administered with clinical precision, and evidence that suggested the hand of professionals rather than amateurs, because every motion, every measure had been calculated to achieve lethal efficiency. And as the investigation deepened, analysts traced financial transactions that moved from the mansion's accounts to offshore holdings, routed through shell corporations and intermediaries who ensured plausible deniability, revealing that the murders were not spontaneous acts of passion or jealousy, but a deliberate operation designed to consolidate wealth, control assets, and prevent exposure of sensitive dealings. And the more investigators delved, the more complex the web became, connecting bodyguards, advisors, and shadowy figures operating across borders. And when Karim Nasser, the Sheikh's personal security, was apprehended in Mexico City, he provided partial insight into the operation, admitting that he had been coerced into facilitating access and administering aspects of the plan, yet he denied full knowledge of the higher-level orchestrators, whose identities remained obscured behind layers of encrypted communications and offshore entities. And even as forensic teams reconstructed the night's events, they uncovered details that were as precise as they were chilling. The sedatives were calculated doses, tailored individually, to incapacitate without struggle. Fingerprints were wiped from key areas, except for carefully left traces meant to mislead investigators. The paths taken through the mansion indicated intimate knowledge of the floor plan and the habits of its occupants. And the digital footprint, partially reconstructed from deleted and encrypted files, revealed communications about loyalty, compliance, and discretion, confirming that those orchestrating the crime had meticulously studied both human behavior and technological vulnerabilities. And as financial investigators traced transactions, a complex pattern emerged of asset movement and manipulation. Offshore accounts funded through trusts, sudden redirection of payments, cryptic transfers to shell companies, all timed in the days leading up to the murders, indicating that the deaths were as much about removing obstacles to control as they were about silencing witnesses. And Sophia Durant's digital fragments revealed she had compiled her own ledger of sensitive information, a collection of communications and financial details that could have exposed the operation, marking her as a target. And yet the sophistication of the crime extended beyond the immediate act. Operatives imported rare sedatives and chemical agents requiring professional handling, manipulated environmental controls, and even studied forensic countermeasures, all to ensure that the operation would succeed with minimal risk of detection. And in Dubai, the Sheikh's death triggered private deliberations among royal advisors and business partners. With asset redistribution occurring almost immediately, Some holdings shifted into entities that could not be publicly traced, while global financial networks observed subtle patterns, redirecting investments quietly, shielding strategic resources. And in Los Angeles, media attention focused on scandal and the forbidden affair, while the investigators pieced together a far more complex narrative, one involving layers of planning, international coordination, and lethal human calculation, revealing that even a man of Sheikh Hamid's influence could not escape the consequences of wealth and secrecy. And as courts convened and Karim Nasser's testimony unfolded, the detailed forensic, digital, and financial evidence illuminated the professional precision of the crime, showing how every action, every omission, and every misdirection had been calculated. And while his conviction provided partial accountability, the architects of the operation remained largely hidden, shielded by political, legal, and financial structures. And the mansion itself stood as a silent witness. Fountains frozen, curtains unmoved, an empty edifice echoing the fatal intersection of ambition, trust, and greed. And even years later, investigators, analysts, and journalists, revisiting the case, discovered fragments hinting at additional actors. Subtle forensic anomalies, encrypted communications, and offshore flows that suggested the network behind the murders extended far beyond the immediate circle, with some evidence pointing to operatives who had never been identified, their meticulous planning allowing them to operate with impunity across continents. And through every reconstructed sequence, from the sedative administration, the disabling of security cameras, the financial redirection, and the encrypted messaging, the story revealed itself as a cautionary tale about the fragility of human trust, the lethal consequences of ambition.
And in the reflective quiet of the mansion's halls, investigators concluded that the deaths of Hamid and Sophia were a tragic convergence of desire, fear, and calculated human behavior, demonstrating that in a world dominated by money, secrecy, and influence, no fortress is impenetrable, no loyalty guaranteed.
And thus, the narrative that unfolded across Dubai, Los Angeles, and international financial networks became both a chilling true crime case and a cautionary tale, illustrating that ambition, secrecy, and human calculation, when combined, can produce outcomes as devastating as they are instructive.
Revealing a reality where power and wealth offer neither safety nor immunity, where trust can be weaponized, and where even the most carefully constructed empires may fall to the invisible forces of manipulation, planning, and betrayal,
leaving behind consequences that ripple far beyond the immediate crime, touching families, institutions, and markets. And as the forensic, financial, and digital evidence continued to be studied, the story of Sheikh Hamid and Sophia Durant emerged as a detailed chronicle of human ambition, the lethal potential of secrecy, and the enduring impact of greed and betrayal, ultimately leaving a cautionary lesson for those who operate at the intersection of influence and desire, that even in a life of opulence, power, and global reach, the most sophisticated security and wealth strategies cannot fully protect against the consequences of carefully orchestrated human intent. And the mansion, now silent, empty, and still, stands as a testament to this truth. Its empty rooms, frozen fountains, and shadowed corridors bearing silent witness to a night that changed everything.